Sprinkles Parents. For those who aren't familiar with what Sprinkles Parents is, we are education activities and resources and that community it takes and village it takes to raise a child here in Oakland and Bay Area. We provide different informational sessions like traveling with kids. Sarah, you're saying you're traveling. Some tips and tricks, or how to parent in style, or how to sign up for kindergarten like you're all here for today, just to help parents like you thrive as we're all pandemic parents trying to learn and navigate as we go. So thank you so much all for attending. And thank you, Sarah, so much for sharing your knowledge with us and your expertise so we can all learn how to sign our kids up for TK and kindergarten. So with further ado, I'll let Sarah introduce herself real quick and then we can jump right in.
Hi, I'm Sarah Wheeler. Thanks, Brooke. I'm an Oakland parent. I live in like the Temescal neighborhood. I have two kids, a son, Max, who's in first grade at Emerson in OUSD, and a preschooler, Ramona, who's going to be a kindergartner at Emerson next year. So I'm right on that brink of like this magical time other parents tell you about when both of your kids are in school, particularly school you're not paying for. So I have all sorts of plans for like all the things I'm going to do, although I don't think many of them will come to fruition. I'm also an educational psychologist. I was a classroom teacher, a special education teacher for many years. So I've worked in schools for all of my working life. And a few years ago, I started an organization with a colleague, Jeremy Gormley, who's kind of like my data guy, and who had spent a lot of time in OUSD, both in the schools and kind of at the policy level, called Get Schooled Oakland. So I'm going to be kind of talking today, like both as a parent and kind of sharing with you things that I figured out, both kind of framework wise and like logistically applying to OUSD and looking for a school for my kid. And then I also kind of have this lens through my organization and through my experience as an educator that I feel is helpful to kind of to share with parents who are making this decision. Okay, and if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. What do you do, Brooke? Unmute or kind of wait till the end?
It's up to people. You guys can unmute. You can go in the chat. I'll be managing the chat so that we ensure all your questions are answered and you come out of the session as an expert in applying for school. So we kind of do whatever's best.
Okay, great. All right. Okay, so I'm going to talk just a little bit about what Get Schooled is and why we exist. I want to kind of set the stage for giving you some information about OUSD as a district, especially like I saw there's a parent with a 5-month-old. Maybe you're like, this is just kind of coming on your radar. Or even for a lot of parents who are in the process of applying, the district kind of feels like this like unknowable behemoth. I want to talk about Get Schooled's approach to finding a school. So navigating, kind of thinking about how you choose a school for your kids. And then I will get into kind of the nitty gritty of ins and outs of OUSD enrollment, of which I do not claim to be an expert, but I do, know more than most, I think. And I've been working closely with Killian Betlak, who is the director of enrollment at OUSD, who's fabulous. And he was generously shared these slides with me. And I think I understand them. So, and he's good. He's got actions and demos and all that kind of stuff. All right. So we started Get Schooled because this was kind of the problem that we were seeing in Oakland. And frankly, kind of all over with public school, that a lot of the data that we see on places like greatschools.org don't tell the whole story of schools. Many schools don't have enough ways to share their good qualities. And particularly in Oakland, families learn about far too few of the schools. And we kind of miss out on great opportunities for our children because of that. So we wanted to kind of think about an alternative to what already existed for finding schools. Okay, So a little bit about OUSD. So this is kind of the demographics. This is from last school year of OUSD elementary. So we have 52 district-run schools, almost 20,000 students. 70% of the students in OUSD are designated low income. Oh, sorry, I was muted. I don't know why, but so all right, you saw that, those logistics. Okay, so that was kind of the demographics of our district. Oakland is a wonderful place that I, love living in. I'm sure many of you don't live here by accident. A lot of Oakland residents, especially, newer residents, really, chose Oakland because of its diversity. It's one of the most diverse cities in the country. The school district is also one of the most racially segregated ones in the country. This was kind of a mind-blowing fact to me. Even though we have over 50 public elementary schools, there's about 12 elementary schools in Oakland where 80% of our white students are concentrated. And about and let's see, even though the city is about 30% white, only about 10% of the district is white students. So there's a lot of segregation, both in kind of choosing to opt out of OUSD, but also within the public schools. So as you may be familiar with and, frustrated or confused by, Oakland uses a lottery system. So you can apply anywhere in Oakland to a public school for your kid, which is exciting in a lot of ways and also exacerbates segregation and is very overwhelming as a parent. So a lot of parents, if you actually survey them, want limited choice. This is a lot of choice. And we know as parents, when you see all the options for bottles your baby could drink from, the more you have, sometimes that's the paradox of choice, the more you're convinced that if you only kind of choose the right way and figure out the system, you'll get the best thing for your kid. So it kind of creates this dynamic for us. You have preference in Oakland to your neighborhood school, and I'll go over later kind of some of the other preferences. Just to kind of lay that, I know there's a lot of anxiety about where your kid will get to go, but about 75% of families actually get their first choice school. And I think almost all of families get a choice within their top 3. And about half of elementary school families attend their neighborhood school. It depends on kind of neighborhood a little bit. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about Get Schooled. You can look on our website, and maybe Brooke, for the multitaskers out there like me who want to look at the site, feel free to put that link in the chat for them. But I want to talk about our approach to finding a school, because I think as a parent, I had this experience kind of around this time 2 years ago. I was like, how do I know what the right school is for my kid? I've got great schools, right? I can look and see that Emerson is a 1, now it's a 2 on great schools. And, Chabot is, I don't know anymore, an 8 or a 9. But I know that's not kind of the whole story. I can talk to friends of mine, but that also feels kind of arbitrary. And I want to think about my long-term goals for my child and school and society. So how do I do this? And so I want to share with you kind of, again, both as an educator and kind of data nerd, but also as a parent, some ways maybe new to you that you might approach this process.
Yeah, Sarah, it looks like there's some questions in the chat.
Yeah, so that data is 2022-21. There was a drop in enrollment from last year, I believe. I want to say a couple thousand, but maybe 10%. A lot of public school districts have lost enrollment since the pandemic for a variety of reasons. Enrollment was down. Yeah, that might change the proportion of people getting their first choice school. But again, because there's such high demand for such few schools in Oakland, it kind of depends on what people are looking for. Some schools, like those 12 schools that most of the white kids in OUSD go to, usually have something around a 200% demand rate, which means that like for every one kid that gets in, there's another kid who put it first and didn't. Walking distance. I'll talk about the lottery system, Irina, a little bit more at the end. Okay, so you can get a sense of that question. So our first from Get Schooled kind of way to think about looking for a school is to not rely on snapshot test scores and to look when you can on data that actually matters. So this is not just my opinion, it's really fact, and a lot of educational researchers write about this, talk about this. There's a lot of resources on our website really detailing why, even just statistically, things like annual test scores that greatschools.org usually use mostly for their ratings do not measure school quality well. So what they do measure almost entirely is the income level of the students at that school. You can almost entirely, like with 80, 90% accuracy, predict the test scores at a school based on income level. And that's because how well kids do on tests is about 2/3 influenced by outside of school factors. So if you're looking for what's the school quality, you need to look in other places. Those test scores basically tell you how wealthy are the kids here. So things like growth scores, that's how much students improve year over year, no matter where they started out. Things like teacher retention and principal tenure, that data is much more helpful in giving you, again, just little pieces of information about school quality that could be brought in with a lot of information to make a choice. The next thing is making sure that, while we're looking for information, and of course it's like, okay, well, if I can't find all that data, where do I go? I do want to get firsthand information. So a lot of us are, trying to find people whose kids who have experience at schools, going on parenting groups online and asking for advice. And that's great. You do want to hear people's stories, but you want to make sure that you're not judging a school based on kind of outdated information or secondhand information. So when someone says something like, oh, I had a friend whose kid went there and they had a terrible experience, you have to kind of think about that with a grain of salt. Remember that could be old. It could be quite biased, right? And it's not coming directly from the source. So you want to talk directly to parents, teachers, people who have direct experience with that community. And you also always want to remember that people's experiences will be different from yours. People have different backgrounds, different kids have different needs. I've worked in a lot of schools. Sometimes like someone just kind of has an insurmountable challenge. So take in that information, but be wary of this. And also be aware that that doing that yourself, like speaking poorly or passing on rumors about schools, especially schools that do serve lower income students, can be really damaging and just also incorrect. So if you know something, you might say, hey, I could put you in touch with my friend, right? Or, I've heard some stuff, but I don't know how new and accurate it is. I think you should try to get firsthand experience. Also going to on Enroll OUSD, you can see all of the school tours, as well as a new thing that they're doing this year called showcases, where they take a neighborhood and have one evening where they hear from a number of the neighborhood schools for just a few minutes. So that's a nice way to get a sense And Enroll OUSD is also starting to gather more information about schools on their site so that you can look up at a school and see, you know, what kind of after school programming they have, what kind of enrichment. You can read firsthand the school's kind of mission statement and what they believe is special about their school. So again, that's that kind of firsthand.
Yeah. And Sarah, one of the questions is about the school closures. Like if you talk about rumor mills, there's always rumors, this school is closing, that school's closing. I think now it's actually out in public, but there are a few schools closing. Is that going to affect anything or how schools might be?
Sure. I mean, school closures will affect things. You can look and see, I believe on Enroll OUSD, one of the things you can see about schools is whether they're a welcoming school. There are schools like MLK in kind of North Oakland, West Oakland is a wonderful school, and it's a welcoming school. So it's gotten funds and resources and kind of direction to welcome kids from schools that have closed. And so that's just something to know. I think that's a cool opportunity. It means that there's a little bit of money coming into that school for next year. And there's going to be some conscious kind of integration of a new community. So that can be exciting. Yeah, I'm not an expert on school closures. I don't think you should believe rumors that like every school is kind of on the line. There are really specific schools that you can probably find, it's public information, are on kind of long lists of potential closures. And usually those schools are schools that are under enrolled. Yeah, so you can ask, that's another thing, like ask the school community, hey, have you heard that, you know, that you're on a list for closure? Is that something you anticipate? Okay. So this is kind of a tricky one, especially because I really, you know, in some ways, I think being an educator can make it harder to look at schools for your kid. You like, you know, all the dirty laundry, you know, that every school has. And if you want to think in a fear-based way, it's easy to think of lots of ways that schools can fail children. And I've been in that place as a parent where I'm kind of stuck in those images as an educator. On the other hand, I also, you know, I have firsthand experience about what makes a school a good place for a kid to be. And I understand from, you know, talking to a lot of parents that can be really hard when you don't have a lot of experience in schools other than the fact that you went to schools, but you've never kind of seen the underworkings. It can be hard to know kind of what to look for. So when we don't know what to look for as signs that our kid is going to be okay, it's really easy to kind of overvalue buzzwords, popularity from other parents, and just certain kind of perks of schools that kind of make us just feel like, oh, our kid's going to be good. So lower resource schools suffer from perception gaps. So what that means is that parents have a hard time being shown what their great qualities are, as opposed to schools where there's large PTA funding, a lot of resources, a lot of parents who have the time and means to be involved and are out there kind of doing PR basically for the school, which isn't a bad thing, but it means that every good thing that happens in that school, you're going to know about. You're going to see it on their website. There's going to be a video, you know, there'll be a parent who comes to the tour to tell you all about it. And that stuff might be real and great. But just as many wonderful things are happening in schools that don't have those resources. And just the fact that we don't hear about them doesn't mean they don't exist. So like, you know, for example, my kid came home from kindergarten at Emerson, which is not one of those, you know, high demand schools in Oakland, and was doing sign language. And he started doing like sign language alphabet, singing like songs in sign language, doing his name. And I was like, where did you learn that? And he was like, oh yeah, we do sign language every day with our teacher. Now that wasn't advertised, right? I did not go on the tour and they didn't say, also in our kindergarten classrooms, we do sign language every day, right? The way that they probably would have at another school. But it doesn't mean that it wasn't happening. So we want to assume that there's lots of good things that we won't know about unless we really ask and talk directly to parents. So one of another example that I think about is like a lot of the times we want electives, right? We want music, we want art, right? Those things feel good. It feels good to be like, my kid's going to get music and art. I don't know if anyone else on this call had this experience, but like my music and art teachers in elementary school, which we had every week, were kind of hated children. They were both kind of like depressed people. They did not inspire me to do music and art. I'm not trying to make you more nervous about who's around your kids, but I just want to say it's not as simple as kind of checking a box like, oh, phew, they have art. Everything's going to be great. They're going to learn to be an artist. I can kind of sit back. It's more complicated than that. And it works in all directions. So that kind of thinking can make it difficult, to feel like things are going to be okay. I use it to make me feel kind of light about there's so many things I can't control in a school. Some things sound nice and don't end up being great. Some things sound bad and don't matter. My kid doesn't care that the bookshelves in his classroom are kind of ratty and used. He does not care. I read that to be something. I'm comforted by a nice, clean new bookshelf, but that has no bearing on my kid's education. So trying to kind of complicate those things and wrestle with them a little bit, I think is a valuable exercise for parenting and certainly for school choice. And then just another way, Brooke, if you go back to that last slide about the one before that about overvaluing buzzwords. Another kind of way to complicate this in thinking about what you do, where you think about nice kind of components of a school that might be good for your kid. Language classes are another one that parents love, right? Like if you're on a tour and they say, oh yeah, you can take French after school, a lot of parents will be excited, and I'd be excited. I want my kid to learn another language. My kid's school doesn't have language classes, but when I stand in the pickup line to pick up my kid, I hear families speaking tons of different languages. My son and I last year came home and started watching videos of Pashto speakers so that he could say a few words to a new student from Afghanistan who had just showed up in the class partway through the year. Many of the kids at my kid's school learn how to communicate in new and important ways with the many kids who are in the special education programs there. And the teachers do a really good job of fostering kind of that shared language. So those are things that I think are really good for my kid and are related to kind of learning about different languages and cultures. It's not really easy for my kid's school to pitch and explain that to prospective parents, right? It's not as clean as saying we have language classes after school on Thursdays or as an elective. But I think it's more valuable than any of the lessons I got in my elementary language classes, like, learning how to sing a song about the parts of the body in Spanish. So it's not always just about the diversity of school. It's also how children kind of learn indirectly versus directly, right? That it's valuable for kids to learn things that are in the fabric of their school, in addition to sitting in a class that teaches them something explicitly. So if I want to set my kid up to be multilingual, to kind of live in a global world, that's really valuable too, right? Maybe even more valuable than a weekly language class. Okay, my spiel.
Just for time, we're probably going to do the questions at the end, folks, in the chat, just so so we'll get to it. So sure. Just so everyone knows. Sorry, Sarah.
Yeah, and then just connect to that, the last piece, is just remembering that we don't make choices in a vacuum, right? We want to consider the impact of our choices on our community. There's a lot of, evidence that attending a racially diverse school has positive social, emotional, and academic impacts for everyone. So that was kind of compelling to me, like a white parent of white kids. thinking about that data and thinking about choosing an environment for my kids that really looked like Oakland. And I just want to stress that putting kids of different races in a building together is not the same as integration. It does take thoughtful work, but it's the work of being in community. And for me, like, that's why I'm here. And there's a great organization called Integrated Schools. They have an Oakland chapter where parents of all backgrounds kind of wrestle with what it means to be in like a successfully diverse school. Okay, I'm gonna go really quickly over just a few schools that we have recognized on our website for kind of a kind of excellence that greatschools.org does not. We don't rank schools. We found these schools by looking at core growth. So again, year-over-year growth in math or English language arts scores, rather than kind of just how kids compare to others in the country, teacher retention or experience, and principal tenure. So there's a little bit about our methodology there, if you're interested. But the schools that we've featured at the moment, we have 5 schools from East Oakland and 3 from West Oakland. These are all schools that I knew almost nothing about before I started this work. And I've gotten to meet principals at these schools, community schools managers. Brooke, if you do the next slide, they can see the schools. And, if you've never heard of any of these schools, you might check them out. And again, it's not just these schools in Oakland. This just kind of serves as a reminder that there's lots of different ways a school can be great, right? And if you've never heard of how great any of these schools are, then, you want to talk to more people and kind of cast your net a little wider. Prescott is just like, is really a wonderful community. I talked to teachers at ICS about how they support their students. Yeah, really lovely places. Okay, with good data to support them. Okay, so I'm gonna, let's see, I will, class size. Yeah. You're going to see similar class size as far across OUSD, unless you're at an under-enrolled school. So even if the size of the school is small, like Emerson is a smaller school, it's smaller than Chabot, we just have fewer classrooms. But that class size usually stays stable. Where you might see small class sizes are often at schools that have lower enrollment. Like I believe Prescott is one of them. I think, last year Sankofa was a school where some of the grades there would be fewer kids, but now that's changing, and they're at capacity. Cool. Yeah, cool. Kids with IEPs. I have a lot to say about that. I think the same principles follow that, like, don't assume that just because a school has a lot of resources and they're telling you they support kids well, that they do and other schools don't. If I am looking, it depends on kids with IEPs are very different, right? And they might be in different programs. So there's a lot of diversity there, but I would be asking about what programs they have there for special education, who the staff are, what their philosophy is on inclusion. And I would really just be looking for and asking about teacher flexibility and tolerance. So that can be hard to get at. I learned most about that just by volunteering in my kids' school. And so that's hard to do when you're looking at a school. You have to kind of talk to parents. But like, what I see matter most for a lot of kids with IEPs, depending on their profile, is just, do the classroom teachers like know how to support a wide range of kids? And sometimes I actually see that happens more at lower resource schools, where they have kids coming from a wide range of backgrounds with a wide range of preparedness. And that sometimes at those more desirable higher income schools, there's a more narrow range of how kids are expected to be. And a kid who's ADHD, hyperactive, for example, gets kind of othered in a way that they wouldn't at a school where there's a wide range of behaviors that are expected and accepted. I would happily talk more about that offline with anyone. All right, so should I go into the enrollment stuff, Brooke? I'm not keeping track of time at all, or like what are.
Yeah, it's totally good. One second,
Okay.
I'm just gonna share my screen again. I was getting your website up for folks
Oh, thank you.
to share.
Thank you. Cool. I have
Okay.
links at the end and stuff too.
Yep. Going back to sharing. Can you guys all see my screen okay? Oh, wait, maybe not.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, Brooke's saying principal tenures too. And again, it's a complicated thing. We have a new principal this year in Emerson. I really love our new principal. He's different from our last one. And I think our last principal's tenure did a lot of really good things, but I wouldn't, rule out a school just because they have a new principal. I would kind of want to know more. Okay, great. And Darren's questions are great. I hope that these next slides will answer those. You can this is from OUSD. This is them sharing their vision and mission. You can go on, Brooke. Go on. This is like they're doing a lot of really good work this year around communication with families, making it easier for families to enroll and making it easier for them to kind of explore schools. So I've kind of never seen anything like this just in the last few months around what they've done. It's really cool, but it's still hard to understand. So here's the timeline for this. If you have kids who are enrolling next year, that now your application window is open. It's just this like amorphous vacuum waiting for you to make choices. I know where my kid's going to go. I just enrolled her in like 5 minutes yesterday, but you might not have that that privilege. So you have until February 10th to make those choices. There's a late application window as well. You get your offers on March 9th, and then you have a deadline for accepting those offers. So you have a few weeks to kind of think. Okay. This is, I think, the district reiterating some of the things that I just said. Okay, so there's a lot of good resources again to kind of look at schools this year. There's a lot of tours happening. You can find that on Enroll OUSD or Choose OUSD. There are new Instagram accounts that I'm kind of obsessed with. It's Town Sprouts. There's an errant N in there, but Town Sprouts for OUSD is this like fabulous Instagram account, and they basically like go into schools every day and make these like adorable videos about the schools. So for me, it's just so helpful as a parent. I'm like, oh, that's what it looks like to be inside a classroom, at International Community School. Like, oh, I didn't know that they had this kind of program at Prescott. So and it's also really cute. So I encourage you to follow them, and then they have Oakland in the middle and the link for older kids. Okay, next slide. Okay, so yeah, these are the showcases that I was talking about. This is from a few weeks ago, but they're still doing them, I believe, where they're trying to do kind of rapid fire a few schools from one neighborhood at once. So check those out if you haven't already. Okay, so
what can you do if you miss those, Sarah? Just out of curiosity, as someone who's missed them.
They record them. Oh, by the way, they are recorded, and they're just in the same place, I believe, where you would sign up for them or find the links. So if you go to Enroll OUSD and you look for tours, the videos should be there.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. Control for income. Yeah, interesting question, Darren. I wish my policy partner was here. I know he would have like a wise answer for you. Darren's asking about like, okay, but if you control for socioeconomic status in the data, can you tease that out more? I would say you probably can more, but just from what I know about data, there would probably still be some messiness that isn't kind of picked up by that control. But I bet it's better. So yeah, Tamara asked, can we rank, Killian, the enrollment officer, says choose 6 schools. Probably 3 or 4 will be fine. Do not put 1 or 2 schools. And when I talk to you about the waiting list, kind of, you'll see why. But he really recommends like put 5 or 6 on there. It's kind of an interesting exercise too. Yeah. Okay. Next slide. Yeah, so this is kind of as his advice. So you'll receive an automatic offer to your neighborhood school. Oh, okay. When you go to apply, it'll say like, do you want to go to your neighborhood school? And you get to rank that, put it where you want it, and also put other schools in your order of preference. So the documentation you don't need when you're applying. I just did this. All that stuff you need to enroll like in August, but you don't have to put in your birth certificate and proof of address stuff during this application window. You can just focus on where you want to go, get that in, and then later do the paperwork. Okay, so this is Enroll-Wise is the new system for enrolling. This is some like kind of boring logistics about it, but it's good to know. And I want to say something, it'll show you when you go to enroll what your, well, I'll show this on another slide. Sorry, continue. Okay, next slide. Applying for schools. So, oh no, this is good. So for TK, this window keeps broadening. So it's really good to have up-to-date information about it. If you're looking for TK, you can send a kid to TK who was born between September 2nd, 2018 and April 1st, 2019. They've made that window much bigger. And then that's the kindergarten window. Irina, TK is transitional kindergarten. It's a program that's, you know, supposed to educate kids who don't make that cutoff for kindergarten, who are just a little too young, but it's being broadened in order to meet a statewide law that is free school for all 4-year-olds by 2025. So every year, OUSD is making that window bigger in order to slowly grow their programs to be able to handle all those 4-year-olds in 2025.
Do you happen to know, Sarah, about, is it a full day TK or
Yes.
like how that works with aftercare?
TK is the same hours as kindergarten.
It is the same hours.
And first grade. Yeah, all the grades, same hours.
So it's, okay, so it's until 2:30. And can kids go to after school when they're in TK?
Yes, I believe so. I think I'm not totally sure, but they've made it so that now when you enroll, it'll show you what the after school options are at the school.
Okay. So even if
yeah, and if you look at Choose OUSD and you look by schools, you can see what grade there's after school options for.
Okay, yeah. Cool.
Hillary, that's a good question about can you appeal? I think it's worth asking. I think it's worth emailing the district and asking them about your question. And you redshirt a kid who has an August. Yes, so Darren, I don't know what the district would say about redshirting. I know I do know a kid who's like turned 6 in the summer before kindergarten. They send her to kindergarten and not first grade. Does that make sense? So I do know that it happens. And I would email the district about that. They're pretty responsive about stuff like that. Yeah, Emily, that's a good question. I have stuff to say about, but I'll finish this and see if I have time. I think, you know, just the TK teachers I've seen at OUSD are just fabulous. I know the teacher at Prescott, she's amazing. And at Emerson, she's wonderful. So the TK, it's not, you know, school, but it is more structured, more academic, and less, well, it depends on your preschool. Some preschools are more academic and structured. Others are kids kind of playing all day. It's not playing all day, but it is developmentally sensitive. You know they've got 4-year-olds in there. So they're not sitting at desks and doing worksheets all day, what I've seen, but it will be more structured, bigger class size sometimes than another year of preschool.
And one thing to note about TK for folks is that it's not every school has TK, is my understanding.
Yeah, there's a new early childhood center at the Kaiser site. So some schools, I believe, like Chabot and Peralta, that's where their TK is. And I was under the impression that like that would be your priority if you're in that catchment for TK, is going to the Kaiser Center. But you can see, again, if you go on Choose OUSD, you can see whether any school has a TK program. So here's just another little slide about whether that your kid's a TK or a K-er. And then I want to talk a little bit about prioritization. That's the next slide. Okay, so this is the list of priorities. This is like in terms of getting schools. So continuing students have the highest priority, right? They're gonna give my son higher priority for continuing into second grade at Emerson next year than a new kid coming in. Foster youth, siblings of current students, and then neighborhood. So this is why every once in a while with a very high demand school, you don't get your neighborhood school. My impression is that most of the time, if you put your neighborhood school first, you will get it. And there are some other priorities below. Okay, carry on. Okay. Now, so this is an example of the wait list that Killian gave. Let me see if I can walk through this. And Brooke, it's got a lot of I think little actions, so I might need you to do a lot of clicking. Okay, so his example, awesome school, has 78 kinder seats, 102 families. It's like a math word problem, apply for kinder. So here's what would happen. They take the continuing students. There's 21 of them. Now they have 57 seats left. Okay, now they take foster youth. You can click. See what happens? Great. There were no foster youth. There were 19 siblings of current students. Now they have 38 seats left. Now they take the neighborhood kids. They have 4 seats left. They take 3 children of that school's staff. Now they have 1 seat left for an Oakland resident. So that's going to be that's not going to be a lot of kids outside of the neighborhood or kind of unconnected from the school that get us a spot. Okay, you can move on. Go ahead. So now you can see they've got kind of a wait list of about 45 kids. All right, another school has 50 seats and 63 apply. So you can click through this. It's just another little simulation. You can see how the spots get kind of taken up. If a lot of kids from that neighborhood go to that school, now there aren't spots for kids outside of the neighborhood.
Sorry, I messed up the slides, I think.
But I think you're doing, yeah, they're a little, but
circles.
I think people kind of get the idea, or I'm hoping they do. Okay, so if you're on the wait list, if your family was waitlisted at your first and second choice, you will get an offer for your third choice, okay? And you will stay on the wait list automatically for your first and second choice school. You don't have to do anything to stay there. You can see for this person, their spot is number 2 for their first choice and number 17 on the wait list for the second choice. It cancels all of the applications for schools below that, right? Because you got your third choice. You're no longer interested in your fourth and fifth choice. Those are off the table. You can go to your third choice school unless you get off the wait list from those other schools and you decide to go there. Okay, next slide. Okay, this family got into their fourth choice school. So you can see they stay on the wait list for the first 3 choices, and you can see that's their position on the wait list at that school. After the 15th day of school, like in August, the wait lists are dissolved. But a lot of spots do open up within that timeline. And go ahead.
Oh, did someone go off mute?
No, we're good, I think.
Yeah, I think someone had the question if you
get Lauren, does TK count as continuing? I need to find out the answer to that. I think it doesn't. I think you have to apply, but it might be different if you're I think you do have to apply to kindergarten if you're in TK.
I've heard that if you're in the school for TK, you get into that same school for kindergarten. Like you can stay there versus having to switch schools, is what the school district told me.
I think if you want to, maybe this
Right.
is a good question to ask. Maybe we can follow up with the list because I meant to research that actually. Okay, and there's a couple other TK questions. A better candidate. If you end up at TK, not at your neighborhood school, does it give you preference for K? Oh, I see. At the same place next year. I don't know. Got a lot of structure and learning so much. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, Emily, there's also a lot of other factors like finances. You know, we were eager to get our kid into, we wanted to get her into TK, but we couldn't. Oh, she didn't make the cutoff, but I would have done that to save the money and for the diversity. Like her, you know, her preschool wasn't very diverse, you know, and I felt ready for her to like be in a different environment. So there's lots of reasons to decide if they should stay in preschool or do TK. Example only first choice applicants. Now, these examples are people who didn't get their first choice. If you get your first choice, it'll offer you that and it'll get rid of all your choices below that. If you get into your second choice, you'll stay on the wait list in your first choice and it'll get rid of all the choices below your second choice, right? If you apply to Emerson first and MLK second, you get into MLK, you'll stay on the wait list for Emerson and all the other school choices will go away. Yes, Tamara, you need to accept before that acceptance timeline is over in the end of March. And you can decide to get off the wait list. You can say, you know, I'm good with my second choice, third choice. I'm not gonna like, a lot of parents are like, I don't want to do this. I just want to know where my kid's gonna go. Fine, get rid of being on the wait list. It can be kind of anxiety producing. Or you can stay on for as long as you want. Rank a given school first listed higher on the wait list? No, Allison, that's a good question. It's not like med school ranking. There's no kind of game about what you put first or second. You don't get higher priority if you chose it first. So there's no, yeah, it's not like, yeah, there's no game. It's just like, where do you want to go first, second, third, fourth, fifth? Okay. You want to move on with the slides, Brooke? Okay, so here's a first choice example. Family is offered your first choice. You always have to accept them. You accept it. All the other applications are canceled, right? Because you got your first choice. Okay, we saw this. Great. Here's another example of the lottery. There's also a few other things that year to year can kind of get prioritized in the lottery. The opportunity ticket is for kids who had a school close. So that is a way that school closures can affect them. That if your school was closed, you get an opportunity ticket. That means you have more priority right at that, you know, second priority for choosing a school. There aren't a ton of those kids, but something to be aware of. And kids who want the distance school have some priority for choosing it. Yeah, Rita, that's an interesting question. Is it a disadvantage to waiting until the school year starts? I mean, like you said, if your kid has an IEP, sometimes it's really worth it to work hard to find a right fit. In general, like a school choice principle for me is like, choose a easy, nice, low key, you know, school. And if it doesn't work, you know, you'll figure it out. I know that the stakes are higher if you have a kid with an IEP. You want to kind of know more information about whether something is worth a try. Change can be hard for kids. It can be, depending on your kid's personality, that could be kind of uprooting. So I wouldn't take it lightly that like, I'm going to change my kid after a few weeks, but it's always a possibility. I think like, I think you need more than a few weeks to know if a school is going to work for your kid. But I've seen some parents that get off the wait list at a school they wanted more and move their kid the first or second week of school. But certainly, if a school doesn't work out for your kid one year, you could try again the next year. But if your kid has an IEP, I'd hope you'd be meeting with people, knowing a lot about what their program's going to be, having an IEP meeting before the school year starts. Yeah, Kayla, so admittance into your neighborhood school is not automatic. They automatically give you an offer. Like the system automatically says, this is your neighborhood school. But you still have to rank it. And there's a slight chance that you won't get it, though in most cases you will. Yeah, there's district options for aftercare. There's a lot of really great options as well as private ones. No, so Irina, putting 6 choices does not, again, like there's no game to it. So if you put Emerson first and you don't put anything else, that's nice, but that doesn't mean anything different from putting Emerson first and 5 schools below it. So it doesn't like weaken your first choice or second choice to add more schools. They just try to give you your first choice. If there's no room, they try to give you your second. If there's no room, they try to give you your third, and so on. Oh, having multiples. Yeah, I'm not totally sure about that. I'd imagine they try not to give you a different school, but I don't know the answer to that. I would email them. Okay, do we have more slides? Are we?
Yeah, the one thing, Sarah, just on the slide, it looks like number 6, it says priority for current OUSD pre-K students into the TK on the same campus.
Oh, there you go. Okay, that
right?
answers the question. So
yeah.
it's not the same as continuing students. It looks like a lower priority, but it is a priority before all other Oakland residents. So that's interesting. But you still have to enroll. If you have a TK or now, you still have to make a choice, do enroll for kindergarten, and rank your choices. Because if you don't get priority for the school you're on site for, maybe it's not your neighborhood school, you want to make sure that you have input into what your second, third choices are.
Yeah. And as a follow-up for everyone, like we'll have this recording, we'll send the slides.
Sorry, just to be clear, that's not a priority for TKers to go on to kindergarten. That's a priority for students in the CDC, the OUSD preschool. So just, I read that wrong, or we read that wrong. So I still don't have an answer to the question about whether TKers are considered continuing students. And my instinct is that they're not. But I would say 100% apply for kindergarten actively if you have a TK or you might not have much of a say in your choice. Yes, after school is free at some schools. Pretty cool. Pre-K is different than TK. The OUSD pre-Ks they're called CDCs. They're offered at a sliding scale. So they're free for some families. They're up to, I think, $900 a month or something for higher income families, but they prioritize slots for lower income families. But they're really great. They're not at every site, but I tried to get my kid in. I couldn't get a spot in time. So anyway, I was told no priority to continue in that school. Yeah. Okay, Wendy, Wendy's already practicing. Take it with a grain of salt, get firsthand information. But she's saying that she did hear that you don't have priority if you have a TK student to go into kindergarten at that school. You do need to enroll as usual, and your kid isn't considered a continuing student like a first or second grader would be. Rita, I believe if you look at each school on enroll-wise, it'll say who has aftercare. And I think all of the school-based aftercare is free. But my knowledge is that it's, but I'm not totally sure. And I think it depends who runs it. It's a good question. I will find out more about it. So Tamara, remember, like, it's hard to wrap your head around. There's no, the answer to your question is no. You won't lose your spot in your neighborhood school if you rank it as second. They're going through your choices like for you. So when they get to your neighborhood school, like if they can't give you their first choice, they'll they'll try for the second choice. You don't kind of lose priority by choosing something else first, if that makes sense. And Allison asked, could I talk more about expanding the TK birthday window? Yeah. So California passed a law a few years ago that we need free school for all 4-year-olds in the state by 2025. So what a lot of places like OUSD have done is they already had a little TK window. It used to be TK was like if you turned 5 from August 1st or September or whatever to December. So if you like almost made it into kindergarten, we're going to give you some extra love. We're going to give you a TK year. They've been expanding that slowly so that by 2025, they have the capacity to support all 4-year-olds. Does that make sense? No, the waitlists are not ranked by enrollment. Oh, are the waitlists ranked by enrollment priority? That's a good question. I think they are, and that's why you have a number on the wait list, but then your number is like objective. So if you're number 7 on the wait list, you're number 7 on the wait list. Maybe you weren't number 1 because you didn't have a priority that other people had, but that 7 stands. Yeah, I know, Tamar. I know it's amazing that's a beautiful comment that they're able to do this system for 18,000 students is insane. Yeah, so just to leave with a few kind of resources, we have a mailing list for Get Schooled. If you'd like to join, there's a link there. I linked to our resource page on these slides, as well as, that Oakland Schools Finder link is out of date. It's Choose OUSD, which is all over those other slides. And then I added something in here, which is like a resource I created, which is some like tour questions that actually matter in terms of your parent experience. I mean, your child's experience and your parent experience. And there's something to explore and think about, so it's less about like what, do they have this program or that, which again, in my professional experience, doesn't have much to dictate whether a kid has a good time at a school. Really, I think about questions like, what does my kid get at home that they're already getting, and what do I want to give them at school? How much do I want to be involved? Who do I want as my parent peer group? What do I know about what makes my kid feel good and learn? And what am I still learning and need to figure out and, will learn over time and don't want to assume? How would I know a school wasn't working, and what would I do then? Like, what is my backup plan? And then questions to ask schools that I think get at a little bit more, whether it'll be a good place to be. So that's a lot of information. I appreciate your questions. I'm glad I could answer some of them. And
Thank you so much, Sarah. We really appreciate it. In the follow-up email, I will be sure to give like Get Schooled information for you guys. You can get the resources, how to contact Sarah and how to work with her to help you with school navigation. Or I believe, Sarah, you also help with like IEP process, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I do consultation with parents around like anything related to having a neurodivergent or disabled kid. Like someone's saying there's a problem. What am I supposed to do about it? How do I navigate the assessment process? How do I find a school that's a good fit? Stuff like that.
Yeah. So I'll make sure you guys have Sarah's contact if you guys want to work with her. Thank you, Sarah, again, so much for the time. Thank you, everyone.
And can I say one last thing? Email the enrollment office if you have questions. I emailed them yesterday because I had trouble with my application, though it was just because I was being dumb. And they wrote me right back. So there's a real live person. They might get overwhelmed. As Tamara said, they have 18,000 families, but like, I wouldn't hesitate to call or email them with specific questions.
And how do you get that information? Is it just on each school's website has their email,
or
is
it the district? So not the schools. The schools, I mean, you're free to do what you want, but like, I wouldn't expect an elementary school principal who has, mouths to feed, so to speak, to get back to a prospective parent. That's just not, that's just not their what they're doing. You know, they're trying to take care of the students in their buildings, especially if they serve a lot of low income kids. So don't be surprised if some principals are not dynamic on tours. They're not good at pitching their school. They might not honestly really care that much. They're trying to serve their students, and whoever comes in the door, you know, they care about, but like they're not in the sales business, right? Those aren't the qualities that necessarily make a good leader. No, if you go on chooseousd.org, you can find a lot of good information. If you go to the OUSD website, oh yeah, I'm on Choose OUSD, and I can see at the bottom the info, the phone number and the email. It's like right here. I just put it in the chat. So
thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'll make sure to put that in our follow-up emails too, so everyone can have the access they need to get answers they need to be set up for success. So thank you everyone for joining, and we'll let everyone go.
Great questions.
Yeah, you guys are really have good questions and setting your kids up for success. So that's awesome. Cool. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Good luck, everyone.
Very true. Good luck.